Right, we want to drill deeper to a discussion this morning, and of course we know the big debate is all about the fuel tax, and today is also a pivotal day where the parliamentary groups will be meeting, one in status, and of course also will be having consultation meetings within other parties as well. And the decision over the controversial fuel tax and a wide array of austerity measures to plug a huge budget deficit lies with Parliament, which has convened a special session this afternoon to unlock the impasse that threatens the nation's economic well-being. MPs must rise to the occasion and confront the brutal reality on the state of the economy dispassionately and without recourse to party or regional considerations. The facts of the matter are pretty clear. A proposal by the National Treasury to introduce 16% value-added tax on petroleum products was ill-advised and poses a serious challenge to the economy, which is the reason President Uhuru Kenyatta offered a counter-proposal to halve the levy, in effect seeking to meet the public halfway. But this has not gone down. This has not gone down well with Kenyans. President Kenyatta has argued that the MPs chose the easier path when they passed the Finance Bill 2018, which vetoed levying the value-added tax on petroleum products. The other MPs cannot run away from confronting harsh realities and making difficult decisions. Thus, his argument is that consumers must pay some levy for fuel that is not possible to run the economy without seeking alternatives, even if that is going to be painful. Well, the argument has always been that 16% VAT was unjustified. Reducing it to 8% is not any better. This must now be debated soberly. Taxation and more taxation is not the panacea for budget gaps. Alternatives must be found. Today is the ultimate day, and of course also we eagerly wait to see what will be happening on Thursday as well. Allow me to introduce our panelists who are here this morning to take us through this particular discussion today. And of course, even you can get to drive a show with me. You can hit us on Twitter, AM Live NTV. It's our Twitter handle, AM Live NTV. Also is our profile name on Facebook, and 205-20686 is our SMS portal. 20505 was our older one. So let's get discussing on this. And of course, I want to introduce our panelists to you this morning. We have with us Dr. Boni Khalwale, who is the Deputy Chair of Ford Kenya. We do have with us as well Dr. Otieno Amolo, who is Member of Parliament from Marieda. We have with us as well Jacob Midio, who is a former Member of Parliament of GEM. And also we do have with us Senator Emmanuel Matangi, who is a Senator of Kiambu, eagerly waiting for Isaac Mwaura to join us any moment from now as well. Let's continue with the conversation, and we can begin with you, Otieno Amolo. Today is a big day. I don't know what ODM is planning. We know Jubilee Party will be meeting in State House. Also, the ANC also have confirmed they'll be having a consultative meeting. I don't know what Ford Kenya has planned as well. Maybe also the Deputy Chair can tell us this morning. But let's just Deputy Party Leader, right? Let's hear from Otieno Amolo.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll get to know the difference this morning.
First, Duba and good morning, Kenya. We wake up to an interesting few last days. Days that have, in my view, had mixed situations of happiness and sadness in equal measure. I think we are happy that we've had some very bright moments. Eliud Kipchoge breaking the world record, a couple of other Kenyans winning very big races. And I mean, that's good news. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we need to highlight such good news because we live in a country of perennial bad news. Mm-hmm. But the bad news, of course, will always come. You know, there's the sad news of 12 bodies of infants allegedly discovered in Pumwani.
Yes.
It's a matter that is worth investigation because the governor who allegedly discovered them is a man given to melodrama, sometimes stage managed. So you do not know where the truth lies, but we need to investigate. We wake up to a few days where a 9-year-old child of the magistrate in Meru was brutally murdered under very sad circumstances. We wake up to the news we just aired where a university student, I think in Muranga, was also murdered. So we always have good and bad news in equal measure. Back to today.
Yes.
Today is believed to be a big day, but in actual fact it is not. It is a day when my colleagues from the Jubilee side of Parliament, I believe both Senate and National Assembly have not confirmed, have been, they say invited, I say summoned to State House. I believe to be whipped along the lines of the revised finance bill. It is also a day where those of us in ODM have been invited to Orange House for a discussion also. I think in the case of my colleagues from the Jubilee administration, it is clear that they've been summoned to be whipped so that they support the amendments by the president. In the case of the ODM, so far it is an invitation for a discussion.
Yes.
And the outcome of that discussion is not clear. But I'm clear in my mind that for my part, I will oppose the amendment by the president, and I would urge my colleagues to rise to the occasion so we raise the two-thirds necessary to defeat the proposed amendments by the president. But I say it's not a big day because, as a matter of fact, the order paper that has been issued in the National Assembly for today does not suggest that that is when the debate is coming. The main debate appears to be intended to come up on Thursday. For today, the most is likely to be a communication from the speaker, what we call a communication from the chair. And after that, the rest of the issues that are listed in the order paper are fairly routine issues that we were in the course of covering. So I think the real big day is actually on Thursday and not today. Because today, other than the communication from the chair, we had other bills that were pending, the urban areas bill, the warehouse bill, health laws amendment bill, and some notices that are coming. So the big day is really on Thursday.
On Thursday?
Yes.
But of course, there's a big day also for the Jubilee Party, who you say, yeah, the party members have been summoned to State House today. So also that can be a big day for them, and we can get to hear from Kimano Matangi as well. Good morning.
Morning, Dubal, and let me also say good morning to our viewers. Just two things quickly that we'll need to clear. First, the bill is coming to the National Assembly, not to the Senate first, and so members of Jubilee who've been invited. And I want to emphasize the word invited because my colleague and friend Tienda Molo seems to have a different view. I don't know how he got the information that there are summonses, but I can tell you that the invitations, Dibal, it's members of the National Assembly who've been invited.
Yes.
For that PG.
Oh, it's not the Senator.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe the idea at the end of the day is because as a party we must agree one way or the other on a position, and especially on a matter as important as this one, because Dibal, we must realize that yes, it is okay to have different persuasions or opinions in politics, but there are times when we must build bridges, we must close ranks. And there's nothing wrong entirely in members of Jubilee being invited to State House. They'll come up with I'm sure a compromise position. And if you just look at what the proposals are, although first they'll come to the National Assembly.
Yes.
The suggestion is that indeed they remain what they are, proposals. And then they have to be discussed, they have to be debated. Different positions will have to shift here and there. And at the end of the day, a compromise position has got to be arrived at. The key thing, in my view, as a legislator and as a leader, is that the interest of the common person must be what will prevail. And I believe and I hope that at the end of the day, that all of us, from the executive, from the legislature, I pray that such a matter would never find its way to the judiciary, but even if it does, then at the end of the day, it is those people who elect us and elected us to represent them. That is the interest that must prevail. And let us remember, Dibal, other than in the judiciary, all of us have been given the mandate and the power that we enjoy by that voter that we are speaking about today, including in the executive. I mean, the president and the deputy went for an election. And so did we as legislators. And so I believe that all those positions, as expressed, are intended to, in the opinion and view of each and position of each of the players, that's the executive and the legislature. There were two different ways of seeing probably the same end, but now that there have to be compromises, I believe that will find its way. I'm sure after that, then the bill will find its way to the Senate, and we'll have our voice and say on it too. The guidelines are simple. Whom do we protect in this case? I mean, whose interest do we all serve? It's the common man's interest.
All right. Yeah. Let's hear from Boni Khalwale. Good morning.
Good morning, my brother. Unajua hii ni mambo ya wajumbe bana. Jacoy and I, we have nothing that we can do. We can say many things, but as usual, members of parliament cannot listen to us.
But other parties are they're actually holding consultative meetings in regard to this. Of course, you have your party representation in parliament as well. So that is what we want to know from that position.
We as the deputy party leader of Fort Kenya, I cannot go and impose myself or my thoughts on the parliamentary group of Fort Kenya. But that does not mean I have no ideas about how we could manage this. I have serious proposals.
Yes.
The point is this. We are inside a hall. There are two cardinal things. We must come out of that hall, and we should avoid any attempt to make it end deeper. We stop digging and plan how to come out of it. As we do so, Kenyans, you must remember that there is a robust parliamentary budget office led by a very knowledgeable woman in that parliament. She's called Phyllis. Very brilliant woman. And members of parliament deliberately refuse to make use of that particular department in parliament. Had they, then what happened would not have found its way to where we are. Because before the budget, there is something called the budget policy paper.
Yes.
This budget policy paper usually is analyzed by that parliamentary budget office, and members who care can easily be informed by that analysis and approach budget making with a lot of common sense and pragmatism. Secondly, as that means members of parliament have a case to answer. They owe us. Why didn't they make these decisions? Why didn't they come to terms with this impending problem at the right time? The second person to blame is the executive. The president took over the office when the debt of this country was 1.8 trillion only.
Yes.
Now, in 6 short years, he has pushed it to 5.1 trillion shillings. Not that borrowing is bad, but he should have borrowed knowing that we would have to repay that money at some time. In fact, not some time, at the agreed time, and that during that payment, some cash would be coming out of the projects that had been financed by this borrowed money. He did not have that foresight. So where are we? We are inside that hole. We must stop digging. Government must stop borrowing. 2, we have to plan of how to come out. And this is now where my comment becomes relevant. Members of parliament, stop burying your heads under the sun. You must help the executive to come out of that hole. Granted that he made a mistake by borrowing, but we must help him as parliament to come out of that hole. What do we do? Otiende Mola, I propose that you stand in your position and ask for a point of order and request the Speaker of the House to suspend the sitting of the House. Suspend, not adjourn. You know the difference. To suspend the sitting of the House. Once it is suspended, you retreat and not go to parliamentary group meetings. Parliamentary group meetings, parties are going to take hardline positions. There will be an attempt from State House to whip Jubilee members not to embarrass the president. That is not what we want. You suspend the sitting of the House so that, one, you have a Kamkunji, and then the Kamkunji informs the leadership of the House to go and talk to the president. I know there are a lot of good people, you included, and Maura here, who will be guided, no, Maura is in the Senate, who will be guided by the interests of the common man. But there are many of you who will be opposing simply because somebody has touched something called CDF. The problem is bigger than the little projects that are funded by CDF. So you need to put your interest aside, agree that we now should go to Parliament with a strategy to rationalize budget, which will include you must remove all unnecessary expenditure. And you know it is there. It includes, my brothers and sisters, you sitting with the president telling him, yes, we are accepting setting aside CDF, but also, Mr. President, can you go and sack all unnecessary employees, especially the cabinet, what? They're called cabinet assist the chief administrative secretaries. Those are unnecessary things.
Thank you.
They are just meant to massage the egos of members of parliament who lost the election. So you agree before you go to the House. The president removes those unnecessary things, and there's a lot of stuff we can do. Then once he removes that, we also remove CDF. And then you also tell the president to take it easy, to take in a deep breath, and accept that this huge thing of the big four, it sounds very nice to the ears, but what is the use of you building flats in Nairobi and Mombasa and Kisumu, our three big cities, and then people don't have food to eat simply because you wanted to meet the president's ambition of having more housing in these big cities of ours? We need to make those sacrifices instead of just talking. Then, finally,
can I just butt in? We take a short break. We'll circle back with you to continue.
Yes, yes,
right,
yes.
Right. Of course, he asked also pertinent questions. Are these also projects, ambitious projects that we cannot truly afford as it is, because also Mwananchi is really suffering right now as far as funding the Big Four agenda is concerned as well. When we circle back, we continue with Boni Khalwale, and also we will hear from Jacob Duo and also Isaac Moore as well. Don't go away. Remember to head over to our Twitter handle, which is AM Live in TV. Also, AM Live in TV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686 is our ISMS portal. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching People and Politics here on AM Live, and I'm holding court this morning with Dr. Boni Khalwale, who is the Deputy Leader of Ford Kenya, also Dr. Otiende Amolo, who is a Member of Parliament from Marieda. We do have with us as well Isaac Mwaura, who is a nominated senator. We do have with as well this morning Jacob Dio, who is the former Member of Parliament from Gem, and Senator Kimani Wamatangi from Kiembu as well. On Twitter, we have your reactions as well, and we have Mawili Maxwell saying this morning, Mr. Kenyatta should stop sitting in mediocrity and make serious budget cuts. Also, we have Wilberforce Ondato saying, tell the president in scrap of CS or to scrap of CS's posts, they are draining our funds for nothing. Also, Jack Adienge is saying our politicians have always failed to meet Wanjiku's aspirations. The faltering economy exemplifies this failure, and MPs may not put Kenya above party individual interests, yet they know the damage caused by the gimmickry. And we have Caleb Mugonziga saying, as long as you touch the funds of MPs, they will act united to shoot down any proposal. So our president will today see the start of a major revolution. And Kennedy Omogi saying that equal powers on behalf of the voter to serve the interest of the voter, not the interest of someone, group, religion, or tribe. Those are your views. Continue to hit us on Twitter. Of course, we shall be reading out some of your sentiments. As I promised, When we circle back, we'll continue with Boni Khalwale. I hope you've not lost your train of thought this morning.
I was just pleading with members of parliament that there is room for consultations before they go to the floor of the House. And they should make proposals to the president and emphasize that the thing is bigger than him. He needs to carry all of us, and all of us are represented by MPs. I have said they must remove chief administrative secretaries. CDF should not just be halved, but it should be removed. And any money available should be channeled through the county governments, the way the constitution is aligned. And then the issue of commissions or Tindamolo. All these commissions are important, but why should they be sitting continuously? We could propose that they be sitting only on interim basis. That way, it would be cheaper than being full-time. Then we have the long-term approach, and this could include, it should include, the government should go and renegotiate the loans so that the loans that are borrowed should be restructured. They could be paid over a longer period of time that would be slightly more bearable. And then finally, so that I don't talk too long, the issue of the constitution is an issue which we must address in the long term. I know the Orange Democratic Movement is very keen on adding other positions of Prime Minister, Deputy President, and all manenos. Personally, I would be hoping that we amend the constitution so that we make the cost of running government to be cheaper.
Right.
Just finishing. Make it a bit cheaper. There are a lot of positions that we can do away with. Namely, we can reduce the number of wards, we can reduce the number of constituencies, we can remove all nominated positions, with due respect to Mwaura there. Mwaura, I'm not thinking you are useless, but these are difficult times. The position of woman member of parliament, it is very exciting, but I don't see it adding any color to administration in the country. And then run away from that lie that Kenyans will die if government is not doing certain things. I mean, as government is busy trying to talk about the big four, are they aware that a simple service like making public education qualitative has failed to the extent that almost majority of the Kenyans, even Mamambogas, take their children to academies?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Just a minute. You should know that public services in hospitals have collapsed. People would rather their wives deliver in private hospitals. Water is not flowing in the taps. People buy water from hawkers. The police is not able to guard us in the estates. You find now people are living in small communities where you have employed private securities. Those are the basics the government should be giving us instead of telling us about some funny buildings that they want to put up.
Okay, let's say from Jacob Midio, because the proposal by the president also is asking Parliament to reinstate the 0.5% on workers' salaries for funding low-cost homes, and also the Robin Hood tax on bank transfers of over 500,000. And we know this particular one also was shut down also by the courts, or it was stayed by the courts for a while. But the president is really insisting on this, especially if we are to realize the dream of affordable housing here in the country, because that is one of the big four agendas as well. But at what expense? 0.5% on workers' salaries for funding low-cost homes. Do you think this is feasible?
Well, it is not. I actually think the president is ignorant of the suffering of Kenyans. Sorry to use such absolute word on him, because I think he has been doing a good job. But we have no shortage of knowledgeable people in this country. So ignorance should be no defense to our future. And whoever is advising the president those people we mentioned here, Debal, at Treasury, how I wish Uhuru could kick them out of office so that Kenyans could have a breather. First of all, let me thank him for this issue of demolitions, because Airgate went down, and now we can have a road, we can have Outer Ring Road going where it was meant to be. And the guy who was saying he was using unpalatable words against the demolitions, the so-called owner of Airgate, we also know that it's owned by a politician. That must go down. But it does not need to levy monies on workers or any other Kenyans to build low-cost housing. What he needs to do is to repossess the houses which people have been very generous to us to build on public land, which is not on riparian, which is not on wayleave, which is not on riverbanks, or I forget the word. They are all in Kileleshwa, Lavington. Take all of them. This was built by the Chinese on our land. Land which was public. Give it to civil servants. Give it to Kenyans. You don't have a reason for a civil servant to live in some place in Ongatarungai or Kayole where there's no water or road, and yet their land has been grabbed in Kileleshwa or Lavington. Take those ones, sell them for 2-3 million shillings for civil servants. Begin with civil servants so that they can afford housing. They can afford to live, to be productive to Kenyans. But, Debal, back to this issue of Parliament. Let me advise my friend Otiende Amolo. There are several ways of going about it, not just to oppose. MPs can teach executive something. In this war, in our progression, there is a missing link. And the missing link is tenacity of Parliament. Our Parliament is dysfunctional. And it is because of people sitting in the executive or people eating with the executive. Remember when we used to complain about voting machines? But it is not, we are not in that space anymore. It is possible, by way of simple majority, this 8% tax that Uhuru has proposed, to vary it just by a comma and suspend it for another 1 year and wait for the next budget year and expel it. You don't need a 2/3 majority. I know you are a lawyer of good standing, but I can teach you parliamentary procedures. Vary it and suspend it. Simple majority. So that we go for another 1 year. I can tell you, Debal, if this country were to shoulder the burden of 8% plus 16%, which is 24% of fuel tax, of tax on fuel, I can guarantee you we shall come here 8 to 10 months down the line to talk about a collapsed economy. And you know, ignorance is no defense. We have people who can do it. I said here that people working in Treasury, beginning with Rotich, are good Kenyans. But Kenyans who are working in the wrong place. I can tell you Rotich can make him minister for tourism, make him minister for heritage. He's a good Kenyan. He's a young man, he needs a job. But his thinking is colonial because he thinks like IMF and World Bank. That is colonial. We must run away from that.
All right. Isn't he an extract from the Bretton Woods institutions? Yeah? He's one, isn't he?
Yeah, but for us, Debao, you can't have it both ways. You can't be borrowing money from China and following IMF rules. Look at the stories going around. Sri Lanka, where we have Djibouti. We have here, I think it's Malawi or Zambia, one of them.
Thank you. Let's hear
China
from
is
Isaac.
taking everything from us.
Right, thank you. Isaac?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the ball is to say that this program seems to be very popular. I met a lot of people out there who are ardent viewers, and I think we need to continue to engage. I'll come into the issue about what is a problem. There are two things that seem to be related. Number one is the fact that we have to accede to some conditionality that we agreed when we got the IMF facility. And I think the president has given us a middle ground of 8%. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be better, because when you also vacate the whole to 0%, it means that then you've got to fill in that deficit, whichever way you look at it. Certainly this will have an impact on the economy with regards to the cost of production, because when you have fuel going up, it means it affects all the areas of the economy. And above, I think we need to be careful about the kind of conditionalities that we get as a result of us going to look for credit facilities from either the Bretton Woods institutions or the new lender in town called China. Because the lender, just like your local bank, does not have your best interest at heart. It is up to you to do what you want to do with the money. He knows that he can make a kill out of it. Why am I saying so? Because in about 2013 there, it's only African economies that were growing at the rate of an average of 5%. The rest of the world was in recession or stagnation. Europe was not growing by more than 1%. And it is at this juncture that we were advised by the Bretton Woods institutions that our economies need to be rebased in terms of their real value. Mm-hmm. And you remember very well we rebased our economy to 25%.
Yes.
And all of a sudden we were told that we are now a lower middle income economy. Now, publications such as The Economist, Financial Post, wrote acres and acres of stories about the new Africa with the age advantage and all of that. Later on, this was revised downwards, and I think it was a reaction from the economic meltdown of the 2008 that happened 10 years ago, and people are looking for new areas of growth. Now, this has caught us unawares. While we kind of are cushioned by the knock-on effect of the global economy, now that our economies are not very integrated apart from South Africa, which has seen a lot of capital flight and the reduction of the value of the rand by about 60%.
Yes.
We have gone on a borrowing spree, you see. Eventually, we've had a situation where our return on investment in terms of these projects is something that is debatable in terms of the inflated cost of delivery of these projects. Now, going forward, this is a political contest, and it's good to be honest about it, because the battle has been taken to the doors of the president. And the president looks bad, because Kenyans are saying it is you to save us. I mean, we are all waiting for you to come from China to resolve this matter. Then the president has taken the ball back to Parliament, mm-hmm. and he's saying, Parliament, first and foremost, we reduce this by half, that's okay. But the proposals to meet the deficit, because now we don't have a balanced budget, it is overshot by about 19 billion, we raid the coffers that have a direct impact on the service delivery of members of Parliament. Now, this is what is irking members of Parliament, because when you raid CDF, when you raid the Parliamentary Service Commission allocation, when you do away with the National Government Action Fund, then you have real problems. There are 7 areas, including transformers, roads, and what have you. So the middle ground for me, and I think this should be whatever we need to resolve today, is that yes, the memorandum will go. I'm not very certain that the National Assembly will be able to raise 233 members. The catharsis is high, but usually people don't attend Parliament. Others are out of the country. Others are in other engagements. So that may be a high order, a tall order, even when everybody seems to agree. But The role of Parliament changed since the 2010 Constitution. It is Parliament that has the power of the purse. Now, this has been negated by the superior numbers of the Jubilee coalition, so that Jubilee party, so that whatever Jubilee party agrees as a party then becomes, says through in the House, and more so now in the spirit of the handshake. What does this mean, therefore? The solution for me would be that we go by the memorandum, because either way we conditioned ourselves, and I think the other 8% can be varied over time. But number two, we must share the fiscal burden. In this regard, it's not fair to attack or to target the allocations for members of Parliament alone. Because if you look at the allocation, and this is why I may differ with my good friend Boni Khalwale, and senior my Boni Khalwale, because Parliament's allocation is less than 1% of the total budget. Even if you are to do away with all those positions, you will reduce very little amount of money, to be honest. The culprit is the executive. That is where all the monies are. That is where you have a lot of duplication. That is where there is a lot of wastage. So, while of course in the spirit of give and take, you must do away with some of the expenditures within the arm of government that is Parliament, but it should not be seen to be the fact that the only place where we can save money currently is in the parliamentary allocations. So I think that is work that cannot be done in today's meeting. I think it should be left to the Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly. I think also if need be, we need to look at the division of revenue bill so that we see the amount of monies we allocated to the counties. I think it was a total of 372 billion, including the conditional grants. So that by the end of the day, we find where we are going to compensate for the 8% that we have done away with. The other thing that also I need to put across is this 3 trillion budget is not going to be met. That is for sure, because it was predicated upon new revenue-raising measures, such as the Robin Hood tax, the issue of the transfer of monies, and all of those things that are very unpopular.
Yes.
And will create a lot of shock within the economy. We just need to live within our means. In fact, we are really out of order in terms of how we are spending, because for the last 4 years, we have spending 40% every year over and above our revenue. So KRA is projecting to collect 1.9 trillion, but the actual realistic collection may be about 1.3 trillion. Yet you have a budget of 3 trillion. So how do you meet the deficit? And Kenyans must know that the national deficit is wishful. It's wishful. It's not something that.
Thank you.
Let me just make this point as I finish. It's wishful. It's not something that is as a result of circumstances. Because it's just like yourself personally. If you decide to spend more than you earn, it is up to your own appetite. We need to reduce this. Now, the current development budget is 657 billion. I am of the school of thought that we need to suspend some of these projects because we can't afford them, and afford what we can pay for. Simple.
All right, and of course we know the Cabinet Secretary also has formed a sort of a special committee to try and look into these projects, which is high priority projects and which is the low priority projects as well. But let's try and see, you mentioned the IMF, because we know first of all that the standby precautionary financial instrument was actually seeded by the IMF. This is a precautionary standby facility granted to Kenya, which was expired the 14th. But we can see the blowback of that as well, that the shilling right now has depreciated by 0.5%. And also this will somewhat really send some shocks to foreign investors or foreign direct investment as well in the country. Can we talk about the blowbacks of this? IMF and him, that is the Cabinet Secretary, choosing not to renew this standby facility by the IMF. What is the way forward? Let's hear from Otinda Molo.
Yes, we will go into that, but we owe it to Kenyans to delve a little more on this VAT issue, because it's more current to us, it's more relevant, and it's quite more direct. Let me make only one quick point on that IMF thing. Boni Khalwale said it, and it is true. When we in NASA were raising the issue, and we kept raising it, that this country was overstretching itself in terms of borrowing, in terms of investing on major projects without money, that it was unsustainable. The IMF, among others, were the first to point out that there's no problem, that Kenya's debt is still within manageable international levels.
Yes.
And they assured everyone, and the papers covered them. Then they wake up one day and say, no, you're in dire straits. We must not believe them. We must get our solutions within what we can manage. And we are all elected to do that. And to that extent, I agree with my colleagues. But let's go back to the issue. There's one issue that the press has kept pressing, and my friend, Dr. Halwale, has touched on it, and some of my colleagues here, but we are mixing issues.
Yes.
On the one hand, members of parliament are being blamed for not doing what they ought to have done. And then they say that the president has reduced the VAT to 8%. On the other hand, they are saying the members of parliament must stand with Kenyans and now do what they need to do. And while saying that, they then bring the issue of the so-called austerity measures, that members of parliament are jittery when their funds are being touched. Now, let's us disabuse ourselves of all this. Number one, the president has not reduced VAT to 8% because it was not at 16%. So when the media, even today in the papers, they say the president has reduced it, I don't know where that narrative comes from.
Yes.
There's a very clear narrative to to benefit the president with the benefit of doubt and besmirch the members of parliament. And it's consistent for the last 5 days. I think it's unfortunate. Number two, the question of budget making is not individual to parliament. And this we must be clear on. Dr. Halwale, you know this. Budget making starts way back in February. And budget making in the current constitution involves the entire public, involves even the press. And everybody has the opportunity to make the analysis. So no one can say that members of parliament had the opportunity to analyze and come up with this unless you tell us at what point you, as Dr. Halwale, as a former and career politician, or you, the press, did the analysis and pointed out that this and this and this should be increased, this should be decreased, but members of parliament did not do that. Number three, we are trying to mix issues conveniently. The issue of VAT is separate from the issues of other austerity measures we need to take to bridge the gap in terms of the budget deficit. Right now, what the president has cleverly done, and the press has sustained this, is to mix the question of where else do we cut budgets with the question of the 8%. They are separate questions. And they are questions which even in parliament are going to be considered separately. And this is where I differ with my friend Jacoyo Midio. My understanding is that when it comes to the 8%, insofar as it's a proposal in a memorandum that is attached to the finance bill that parliament had passed and had suspended it, when it then comes back to parliament, it falls squarely within Article 115. And which means, as parliament, we only need to have options. To consider the proposals by the president on the finance bill and accept them, or to consider it and reject them. If we reject them and we want to maintain what we had passed, then we must marshal a 2/3 majority. If we accept them, and that is to the extent in which I agree with you, if we accept them and only want to again slightly adjust it in a very slight manner, then we may not need the 2/3. But the problem is, where we had postponed the VAT, the president has now proposed 8%. Unless we want to make a very slight adjustment and say, now not 8%, 4%, 2%, something like that, we are getting nowhere. And that is why, in my view, we must stick to where we were, which is reject the proposals. Then we come to the second question, and that's now where the issue comes, Dr. Halwale. The issues must not be mixed. We reject that and leave the VAT on petroleum products at 0 as we had proposed it for now. Then we now ask ourselves, where do we bridge the gap? That is where the supplementary estimates come in. You realize that on Thursday, they have put the question of the memorandum first. Thereafter, they have put the question of the supplementary estimates first. What I had thought they would do was to bring the question of the president's memorandum today. Then, depending on what happens, we allow tomorrow, because tomorrow the budget committee is meeting, to have that discussion, what you are calling the Kamukunji, because the supplementary budget will be presented on Thursday. Now, that's where we can now discuss those other issues. But what they've done is that they put them back to back. I think they put them back to back on the assumption that Parliament cannot marshal the numbers. And I think it's unfortunate. Now, let's come to these other issues. It is not right to say, for example, that members of Parliament are greedy, that's why they are protecting CDF. Do you realize that all the areas that are proposed for reduction does not touch on the individual benefits of a member of Parliament? It does not touch on the salary. It does not touch on any allowance. So how is it a pain to the members of Parliament? The National Government CDF fund is not a member of Parliament fund. It is for the citizens. If you reduce it or you cut it, Halwale, it is not Otienda Molo who will benefit, because I get not a single cent from it. It is only reducing it. Now, the interesting thing about that overall cut is that the cuts appear focused on the devolved funds, on the CDF, on the counties, but not on the executive itself. I agree with you that if we were to go there, once we shoot that down, then we ask ourselves, now where do we need to save now? There are many. There are quite many. I mean, let's start with what's on the nation.
Right.
The National Land Commission is said to have just paid 1.5 billion to acquire Integrity Center. And it is said to have been under compulsory acquisition. Now, if you look at the article in the Nation itself,
yes,
you will see two interesting things. One, and we all know this, that Integrity Center was taken over by the DPF upon the collapse of Trust Bank. And because Trust Bank and Trade Bank were involved in all sorts of dubious things, and it became necessary to take it over.
Yes.
Most of the institutions that were taken over by the DPF, it becomes actually a state property. How the DPF sold it back to private entities, I think after 21 years,
yes,
and why it sold it, for those now private entities to sell it back to government, is something that needs to be inquired into. But more fundamentally, under the Constitution, when you compulsorily acquire anything, yes, you are required to pay the market value. But the market value by the said owners was 400 million in 2013.
Okay.
So why would you pay 1.5 billion? Now, if we went that way, I could enumerate to you at least 14 specific measures which, in my view,
should
in addition to what Boni Halweli said, should be considered. But let's not mix issues. Let us focus on that bill, deal with it, then let's come back and ask ourselves, what are the areas of savings that we require, including in terms of numbers of cabinet secretaries, the numbers of chief administrative secretaries, the numbers of PSS. In some ministries, they're up to 4 or 5.
Yes.
There are so many
we'll
areas.
look at that.
Yes.
But let's say from Kimani Omatangi, because I wonder, we need to look at the options on the table as well. If at all you don't really garner the numbers today, then what? Are we going to remain with this? Because Otieno Amolo is saying in the first place that yes, there has not been, we have not seen any reduction, because in the first place we didn't have the 16%. And I think this is what we've had as a misinformation to the public from the executive, that yes, we've reduced from 16 to 18. I think that was just a proposal. It was not in the first place, a reduction. What do we have on the table today? Because it seems also we've been batting our heads on the wall, and this is the issue where now also the issue of party really comes into play, because all the parties were collapsed under the Jubilee party. And now we're seeing what you're calling it as an invitation to State House, which is not really a summoning, and we don't know what will really transpire today. So we want to know. I know you were not, you know, in attendance today, yeah. But we see now where we have the blowbacks of a one or a monolithic party, taking reins.
Well, allow me first to just make just 2 comments on what some of the issues that were raised by my colleagues, and then I'll take on that, and I'll take a very short time. first, because I wanted to concur, but yet disagree with a few of the comments. And Dibal, it is important that first we look at or ask ourselves, how have we gotten here? And I believe if you recall, all the times when this matter has come on the table, I have been consistent on one thing, that I believe we have not been right as a country for a long time, not only now, with the policy that we have pursued in managing and growing our economy. We have, Dibal, it is true, and it has been wrong that we have persistently only relied entirely on either loans, debts, taxes, foreign funding to manage to grow and sustain government spending, period. I mean, we have not thought differently at all. I mean, ask yourself, for example, when did we sit on this panel as we are looking at issues and either debate on what has been done in terms of either economic incentives in incentivizing, for example, investors who would come here and vibrate our economy such that we would have probably more capital injection in our own economy locally, and which, of course, even if you are to tax people, Dibal, you can compare with many other economies, you would say you're making taxation less painful. I mean, look at, for example, like a case like Dubai. If you go to Dubai, it's not that they don't tax people. They tax people. But they're taxing people against the backdrop of a serious drive by government to ensure that they have invited and incentivized so much foreign investment within that country, such that the activities and the amount that you generate within that economy, even if you tax those people, then it is not as painful as it is. And that's why I think that that's one of the things that we have to look at. And let me just make one point. For example, look at when we were introducing the 16% VAT on fuel, and ask yourself, in the projection, how much was being projected that it's going to be raised within the current budget? 75 billion. Now ask yourself, Dibal, what is the value, net value, in assets and worth of the richest Kenyan today? Or even expand it, the richest business. 75 billion is peanuts. Is peanuts to or comparable to what you would compare between the top richest 50 Kenyans. And so you'd be asking yourself, when we have made this argument here, even if you are to be introducing this to fund that budget, and let's go back to that argument. I asked in our other debate here, for example, if you say to a company, for example, like Kenya Breweries, like Safaricom, who collect from Mama Mboga, from the matatu operator, from a tout, and from the richest person, and together they amass a whole profit of 20 billion, and you tell that person that your taxation percentage is, for example, 15%, and then you go to a business that operates probably here within Nairobi, selling fruit juices and has a whole base capital of probably 50,000, and you tell them your taxation percentage is 15%. Now, what are you saying to that economy? What are you saying to that policy?
Yes.
You are saying that you have your priorities absolutely wrong. I mean, you are incentivizing one part. You are actually making it more possible and more gratifying for the big collector to continue dominating the rest. And then you focus on the wrong areas to collect taxes. I just wanted to make that point that which I would want to finalize with this. Look at, for example, the question that we have had on the table of pending bills. And pending bills, as a member of a committee which have sat in public accounts for a long time, even with Boni Halwale, right now, Dibal, the report that is out from the controller of budget is that pending bills within counties are over 100 billion. But that is counties. Who has asked today how much are pending bills in national government? And you know what you're talking about? You're talking about money that has been drained from you, from me, from the other person, when you have gone into the lower bottom of investment, maybe to go and supply software, maybe to go and supply toilet paper to offices in county governments, offices in national government. Now, when you drain the pockets of all these people sitting here and collect it as government, either at national or county level,
Thank you.
and you do not pay, then what are you saying to that economy? You are saying that you have emaciated, that you have incapacitated your people even to generate the base. And so what I'm laying the basis for is that when you see and you hear the cries of the people that this is punitive, we can't afford this, there are other underlying and bigger issues that we have not been looking at. And lastly, unless and until the time when we will address the question of inefficiency and massive inefficiency and massive incompetence and duplication within spending of governments at both levels, we are saying nothing. I mean, if you look at the argument by any person from the controller of budget to the auditor general, the argument has been one, but let me finalize with that point. Ask any government, local or national or county, how much was your development expenditure compared to your recurrent expenditure? Every county government has been spending more than 3/4 of their allocations on recurrent budget. If you give a county 7 billion, they will be using more than 5 billion on recurrent, only 2 on development. Now that tells you that on that ratio, the consumption is way much higher than what you're investing to grow your economy. So if that is the same scale at national government level, because that's how it goes. Remember when we tried to institute the handshake, the golden handshake, it was because all our monies were going into recurrent expenditure. So what you are saying is that you cannot sustain such a ratio and then hope that you can be able to manage it only by inviting people to come and give you a loan. We must think out of it and say, this is time now to grow our own economy. Once we start doing that, then things can change.
Okay. Let's hear from Jacob Dio. So what is the way forward? Because we've heard Otenda Mono mentioning that he's got like 14 issues that we can consider as far as, you know, austerity measure is concerned as well. Because we need to have solutions as well. We've been talking good game about this, and I think Kimani Matangi, you remember also, we actually here looked at the manifesto of Jubilee, you know, blow by blow, and seeing what they've been able to achieve within the given 5 years, you know, in the first term that they had, right? And you could talk about the conducive environment that we have for investors as well. But do you think even right now, what is really happening in the country with the wanton wastage and, of course, the corruption that also is just a runway in this country, that investors also will be confident? No. Let's just we'll come to you. Let's just hear from Jacob.
First of all, I must complain. I think you give Omatangi too much time. He can't talk for 10 minutes and not put Uhuru on the spot over this issue. This is an issue that Uhuru took an oath to protect Kenyans over.
Omatangi is not in the advisory committee.
No, but he is talking to the public. We have been here supporting President Uhuru Kenyatta for what he has been doing about corruption. Like today, let me send him to stop the theft of the 1.5 billion over Integrity Center and go after the law firm. This law firm of Aden, Wetangula, it's doing very wrong things about this Integrity Center.
This is the same story that I think, was it 2 years back, we were talking about the Integrity Center?
Not even 2, we have been talking about it for about like 10 years. They have been, they stole, they want to steal again. Integrity Center. And you know, the irony is, Integrity Center is where anti-corruption sits. So the thieves are within anti-corruption colluding with this gentleman called Aden of Aden and Wetangula law firm.
But
we must mention it because it's on your paper. You can't even argue with me because.
But I need any evidentiary documents from
oh,
you.
yeah, that has been tabled in Parliament.
Let's just have the paper on screen as well.
It's
a side by story there.
Yeah, it's in front page.
Yes.
Yeah. You know me, I don't know how to mince words when I see something wrong. I know this is 1.5 billion. He could begin with by just taking it back. Stop them. Arrest this gentleman called Aden. I know him. He's crafty. What they have done here it's wrong on Kenyans. Begin with this because we are looking for money to save our economy. Secondly, let me just say that, it is interesting. If you look at the tapes of last week, the two senators here, the Mzungu from Ruiru here, and Senator Matangi, they have changed tune. The executive is culpable. We must talk it, because I think that's what Kenyans expect of us. You don't wake up at 4 a.m. to come and sugarcoat. You say the truth. Let me tell you this, Ediba. The MPs, I do not believe the MPs can raise the 2/3 numbers. So I was teaching Otiende how they can beat Uhuru's quote-unquote ingenuity. Because if this thing is left to stay, we have a problem as a country. And the advisors are all from IMF. They are making money to foreigners. Mm-hmm. We must deal with them. So Utiende, if you could raise numbers, I saw you guys in ODM and NASA. When the minority leader spoke a very different language during the sugar debate, then your whip was missing in Parliament. So I don't believe you can whip yourself into Parliament to do anything. I don't believe you people, because I know the configuration is wrong.
Okay.
So now, what am I saying? Today, the Parliament and the Speaker must think Kenyan. Because if we do not, 10 months down the line, there is not going to be much of an economy to speak of. I know for a fact that the Treasury is not talking good measures to expand the tax base. I don't even think they have the proper capability. The intentions are wrong. They are betraying the legacy of the president, and the president is letting them. And I do not know how to come here and blame others and not blame the president over this tax issue. The best thing is to even leave it at 8%, but suspend it and next year expel it. That is the only way this country. Look at what Ghana has done. How is it that 3 hours away on a flight, we are increasing taxes and they're expelling taxes? I mean, is it that Ghanaians have more brains than us? Somebody told me yesterday, Deba, that a mattress that costs 18,000 shillings here in Arusha, in Kenya, it is 48,000 shillings. How? I mean, Arusha and here, driving, you can even walk to Arusha. Here at the border, what are we doing? How is it that Kenyans are now buying goods? Cement. If I want to build something in Game, I buy cement in Busia town because it is from Uganda and it is half the price of what Kenyans are selling it. Something is wrong. The president may just not know, but ignorance is no defense to the law.
Thank you. All right.
Let's have a small question.
Yes.
With all due respect to Dibal, Maura has said it, that Kenyans really follow us on this panel, on this program. And therefore, I would like to appeal to my brother Jacoyo. You restrain yourself. the company called Adan, Makoha, and Wetangula Advocates.
Could we not really delve on that? Because
No,
we don't have any evidentiary documents from here.
That's why I want to comment on it. You've let him go away with a statement. That company, if you have a beef with Wetangula, he's a politician, he has an opportunity to defend himself. But to use this program to call Adan a senior advocate in this country that is a crafty man, that is not fair. Adan is not able to defend himself. You know him, I know him.
Okay.
He's a lawyer, he can go to court.
But we shouldn't use this panel.
No.
All right. Could we let's not really go off the rails, please? No. Jacoyo, please. Can we just
I don't think Adam
okay?
is crafty.
All right.
Just
Thank
a
you.
hardworking lawyer.
But you can do
All right, Jacoyo and all right. Listen.
Yeah, it's not right.
I don't want us to really go off the rails. Could we just focus? And we want to talk about these austerity measures that we were talking about, 14 of them. And I think this is your chance, Boni Halwale, instead of delving deeper on matters that were not really on the table.
Yeah. I think Honorable Amolo has put it very well. And to me, the issue of the big four, there is the aspect of manufacturing, which is very attractive, and which, if we support it using taxation, would go very far. The East African community, we are the giants, Kenya. We are a population of around 200 million people.
Using taxation to reduce or to do what?
We use taxation, the taxation in this country, to enhance manufacturing. That is the point I'm building now. So we have a population of about 200 million people in the region. So if Kenya can make the cost of doing business affordable, attractive, by making it enabling rather than restrictive, then a company, for example, like Toyota, would move its plant from Japan to Nairobi. And because we have a market of 200 million people, we manufacture from here, we will create jobs, and we would sell these vehicles locally and in the region. It is therefore imperative that, as I call for consultations before going to the floor of the House, it is imperative that we remove these taxes in total so that these opportunities present themselves, and then at least President Uhuru will have succeeded on one of the big four, namely creating jobs and opening up manufacturing sector in this country. You know, Jacoy, I want to agree with you when you get angry with President Uhuru. Only 6 years ago, Kibaki exited the stage. And by the time he was exiting, he had managed to move Kenya from prescriptions of IMF and World Bank, because when we took over in 2003, Jacoy, you remember, we were under a prescription of structural adjustment programs. Kibaki removed it and left at an economy that was growing at 7.1%. And now, in 6 short years, Senator of Kiambu, President Uhuru has now taken the country back to prescriptions from IMF and World Bank on VAT. It is very regrettable. And this is why I think great minds, and you're there, Wamatangi, Amolo, Moura, you go and sit as leaders of our nation and carry out a conversation that we can't go back to prescriptions of the World Bank. And these cuts by the president must be supported. Dear members of parliament, you must support it. If the 8% will be an interim measure that enables us now to start moving out of the hole, support it. And when I say this, I'm being trolled on social media that I'm saying good things about President Uhuru because I'm looking for a job. No, I already have a job. I'm a full-time practicing politician. It is a very busy undertaking.
It's a free job that is not paid.
Yeah, but you see, let me tell you. Let me tell you. for the years
The
that
pension is from the earlier job, not the one
for
he's
the
doing.
years that I've been
As a bullfighter.
for the years that I've been in Parliament, and I'm glad all of you are now in Parliament, you have the experience. The money you get from Parliament, you're merely a conveyor.
That is true.
You just convey to go
much
and
is
buy
true.
Thank you.
coffins, you
All
go
right.
and settle
Welfare.
bills, you go and pay school fees.
Okay.
So
Absolutely.
if the reason of you being in politics is because you're looking for a job, please talk to me. The money there, you're just a conveyor.
All right.
So I was concluding by saying that it therefore, on an interim basis, be necessary that we support those cuts by the president and live with that 8% as we prepare Wait a minute, you'll have your bit. As we prepare on how to get out of that hole in total.
All right.
Let me tell you,
No,
there is the issue.
you have made all the points, Dr. Luwale.
Yeah.
Now,
You're getting angry.
No, I'm not
You're
getting angry. I'm just looking at the
cool
time
man.
and wondering
Be
whether
a
you
cool
also
man.
contribute.
Let's hear from Otende. Otende. Also, as we're preparing our headline text, please. Otende.
Yes, we've had you. You flogged it enough. You know, and
The horse is dead now.
It's not that because you are supporting the president, but I saw you over the weekend. I think it's because you are oscillating towards a certain regime for futuristic purposes. I think that's a polite way to put it. But if you ask me, I can explain. But let me not go there. I think the point is not that we must support the measures by the president. The point is that we must have a conversation
Exactly.
on the issue, and that I agree with. Because of time, I'll not go too many. Let me just mention like 4 quick points. One, if we appointed, the president himself appointed Abdikadir, and I think the CEO of which bank?
CBA.
CBA
Isaac
Bank.
Awondo?
Yes,
Yes.
and they sat and came up with a beautiful report in terms of how to merge institutions of state and government.
Yes.
It made a lot of sense. Up to now, it has not been implemented. Why? Implementation of that alone would save us a lot. Sitting in the Public Accounts Committee, the amount of duplication that we find even in moribund state institutions is unbelievable. Two, there is the whole question of the Auditor General's report. I have said this, that if the president and everybody who's serious about saving money in this country, you don't need to go everywhere. Just look at the Auditor General's report, look at the reports of the Public Accounts Committee. I can tell you that on any single day we sit, the amount of money that cannot be accounted for is not less than 100 million on any one day, on whichever department you take. You just need to follow that and bridge the gap, including yesterday when we discovered that there are people who get interest in government bursaries without even accounting for, in millions. Three, we must examine even the county governments. The county governments decided to implement a very funny scheme of mirroring national government. The constitution requires that small counties do not need more than 3 chief executive officers called ministers. It's supposed to be between 3 and 10. All of them went for the maximum number, and some have actually gone for more, obviously copying the president. And then they have a retinue of advisors. So even the structure, the county government that has been adopted outside of the constitution needs to be required. Four, Dr. Luwale talks of commissions. The problem is not commissions. If you analyze all the commissions in this country, the amount of budget they take is 0.003% of the total budget. The problem is, for every commission that we have, there's a mirroring. There's another body within the executive that is created to do the same thing. And by the way, all of which get more budget than the commission. And I've analyzed this. Whether it's the Gender Commission, whether it's the Human Rights Commission, whether it's the Ombudsman Office, where you find there's another body sitting in some ministry that gets more money. You know, if you look at all this, and security, the security docket, we have increased the number of police officers. I think in the last 2 years, we've increased it by 65% in the last 3 years. We've increased the security budget, the NSIS alone, and nobody asked this question, has a budget that has increased threefold in the last, I think, 5 years.
Thank you.
31 billion.
31
so
billion.
we can have this conversation, but let's not mix them.
Yes.
We first zero rate the petroleum, then we have the conversation.
Thank you. I think we need to give your headline thoughts. Let's just hear from Isaac Maura. In fact, also the biggest issue will be the soldiers in Somalia as well, as we're winding up. That particular cost of holding our soldiers in military on the ground, our boots on the ground in Somalia, it's really turning out to be a military occupation. Of course, now it will be heading to 10 good years. Isaac Maura.
Yeah, thank
Briefly.
you, Debal. I think the issue is that when people conceptualize government projects, you have three types of individuals. There are missionaries who want to achieve the best intentions. There are mercenaries who are looking for a kill, and there are misfits who just find themselves there. Now, with that kind of group of people, sometimes good intentions, are made to achieve the opposite. Now, if you look at the U.S. system, they have what we call the Sunset Commission or the Sunset Clause. In every government agency, they are given a specific period of time for which to exist, say 15 or 20 years, upon which they cease, or the Sunset Commission then reviews and gives a new mandate. Now, I have said this on this show, and I want to repeat. The way we make our legislations, that every issue has to create a new government parastatal or a semi-autonomous government agency, is a problem, because you end up with the CEO earning a lot and everybody else earning peanuts. But let me just quickly analyze what I think
Briefly
needs to be done. Number one, if we want to look at where we need to do the cuts, the issue of travel is critical. Kenya is known globally for having huge delegations of people go to do shopping because of the per diem appetite. Issues to do with furniture, tea and entertainment. People must take their mandazis from home before they come to the office. They don't need to. And flowers. The issue of advertisement. use social media. You use very little and you get maximum value for money. Risk management. The non-essential services, security, messaging, and what have you. Contract firms and pay a third of the price. The issue, and this is the elephant in the room, the issue of vehicle leasing, really, what do we really need to do that? The issue of equipment, medical equipment, this is a big scandal that nobody wants to talk about. We've moved from 4.7 billion shillings to 9.4 now without any form of approval, and some of those things are not even being used in hospitals.
Thank you.
And then finally, the issue of roads. I was talking to Dr. Alfred Mutua, the governor from Machakos, and we were looking at how much money is spent to build 1 kilometer of road. And you find, on average, it should be between 15 to 25 million, depending. But you find 50, even we have talked on this show, there is a road that is being built at 1 billion per kilometer. This is where corruption is.
Thank you.
If you are to deal with this,
right,
and you implement reduced cost implementation prototyping, what I call RECOP, then you save a lot of money. But to raid the allocations that are directly affecting the work of members of parliament,
thank you,
really is unacceptable.
Right, 20 seconds because we are running out of time. Kimano Matangi, your closing remarks, 20 seconds. 20 seconds, beginning now. I'm counting. Yeah, Wamatangi, you take a lot of time smiling. It's now heading to 10 seconds.
Is it because you are threatened by Jacob that you don't want to give me time? So even
we are winding up.
I mean,
20 seconds, sir.
But allow me the freedom and latitude to express myself freely. But once you start with
the pressure on me, we are winding up. We're winding up.
Fine, anyway, thank you. Thank you. But don't take Jacob seriously. And I wanted actually to start with Jacob. He had his own version.
Your 10 seconds
of what affordable housing is, and I just wanted to say, I believe that affordable housing is a good thought. It's a good concept for Kenyans, because we cannot overlook the dignity of housing Kenyans properly. But in my last thought, Dibal, I would want to say to members of the National Assembly, I think the way forward is to not fight back, but to look at that, but with a very open mind at the proposals that the President has brought, and see what is doable, what is not, what can be compromised, but at the end of the day, where can we find compromise so that we are all winners.
Let's leave it at that.
You raised that very important issue of security.
We'll talk to
Dibal, security of the country, we must ensure that we don't compromise security of the state.
We'll pick it up on it next week. Jacob Medio, 20 seconds.
Security of the country does not mean occupying Somali. Number two, Dibal, this issue of taxation on fuel in Venezuela, the inflation rate is 1 million% because of taxation and they produce oil. So it is not something we can. My last 1 second, Bonnie, I apologize, but law firms are entities, not individuals. So whenever I mention the thieves, if a law firm is thieving, don't cry too much.
Thank you. We'll leave it at that. Let's hear from Attorney Amolo.
Mine is only for my brother, Halwale. I'm glad that he's taken my advice on going Mandarin with a Mandarin collar. But my advice is on a second issue, that Article 148.8 does not allow a person to be deputy president for more than 2 terms. So do not believe members of your nation that they can come together with the possibility of the current deputy president supporting them and remaining deputy. It would be unconstitutional.
Thank you. All right. Boni Halwale. All right. Briefly, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. Boni,
I'll leave that for another day. Amolo, I'm such a small thing. When I speak, nobody listens, so you shouldn't don't be worried about what I say.
You're my friend.
But my point is this. My point is the government. You must ensure that you give judicial officers, magistrates and judges maximum security because of the nature of their work. Look, this little girl, Maribel Kaplon, has lost her life not because she offended anybody, but probably because of a judgment that the mother might have made as the magistrate in Meru. We must give security to judicial officers. It's very, very important.
All right, lastly, 20 seconds. Isaac.
Yeah, I think mine is not political. I just want to congratulate again my friend Irongo Kagata. He got married over the weekend, and it was a colorful. The president came and we had a very good time.
So you're the best man, huh?
Of course I was, and I was very happy. And also all those bachelors in parliament, let them also get married.
All right, thank you. Let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for your valued company as well, and of course for your contribution this morning. We really do appreciate. This conversation can go on and on and on, and we'll leave it at that. So we eagerly wait to see what will be happening on Thursday, and of course we'll pick up on this next week on People and Politics. Thank you for